Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the Psalms. Today we come to another short psalm of David, and it is Psalm 53. Now, the emphasis of this psalm is almost completely going to be on the one who disregards or refuses to acknowledge God, the one who says in his heart, "There is no God." And so, from this standpoint, we're not talking about all men everywhere in this particular psalm. Instead, David is focusing purely on the one he calls the fool. So let's see what David says in Psalm 53. Beginning in verse 1, we read, "The fool has said in his heart, There is no God. They are corrupt and have done abominable iniquity. There is none who does good. God looks down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. Every one of them has turned aside. They have together become corrupt. There is none who does good. No, not one. Or have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread, and do not call upon God. There they are in great fear where no fear was. For God has scattered the bones of him who encamps against you. You have put them to shame, because God has despised them. Oh, that the salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When God brings back the captivity of his people, let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad." Here in Psalm 53, David is going to place an emphasis upon the attitude of the one he calls the fool, but also upon the impact that those individuals have on the people of God. So let's look at a couple of things quickly from this particular psalm. First of all, you have the depiction that is going to be given of the fool here in Psalm 53. He says that he is one who says in his heart that there is no God. He is one who is corrupt. He has done abominable iniquity. He's done, as we might say in our terminology, very bad things. He is one who is unable to handle the prospect of doing what is right, what is good. And as a matter of fact, you have this statement that's going to be made twice that there is none who does good. Now, that doesn't mean that there is nobody on earth who does good. But rather, what he is saying is that among those who are of this group, those that are the fools who say there is no God, as he puts it, those who are ones that God has looked among to see if there is any understanding, there is none that does good, no, not one. Because if there's not the belief in God, there's not the desire to do what's right. There's not the focus on doing what is right because there is no right. There is no wrong. It is all just simply we do what we want to do. And so the fool, as David describes him, is the one who refuses to acknowledge God and is one who instead acts contrary to what is right and good. As a matter of fact, they are described as the ones who eat up my people as they eat bread and do not call upon God. They don't care what God says. They don't care what God's rules are or what God's judgments are. They don't even care whether or not God exists. They're going to do what they want to do. And there are many people who fit this type of categorization, who don't care anything about God, who don't care about what right and wrong is or why it's right and wrong. It's all about them and it's all about what they want. But David's not done because he's going to somewhat flip the tables in verse 5, where there he says, "There they are in great fear, where no fear was. For God has scattered the bones of him who encamps against you. You have put them to shame because God has despised them." There is coming the time, and there does come the time, where God reacts to the foolishness of the fool. And in that time, great fear comes, David says, because God has worked among the people. And because the things that were at one point successful are no longer successful. The things that were being able to be accomplished for themselves personally begin to fall apart. There's going to be a time, and there is a time in the midst of life when the fools always seem to be successful. But then there's a time when everything starts to crumble around them and everything starts to fall apart. And those who are doing what's right and those who are doing what is just come out on top at the end of the day. There's a lot of things that could be said and a lot of things that we could look at from this particular psalm. But the overall emphasis of the psalm is on the importance and the value of making sure that we acknowledge who God is, what right is, and that we seek to do it. Because nobody likes to be insinuated or to be called a fool. And yet sometimes we can act very foolishly when we are ones who refuse to acknowledge God, and when we are ones who refuse to examine and to live by the standards of what is right. These are the things that David talks about in Psalm 53. I hope they're beneficial to you. Next time, we'll come back and we'll begin looking at Psalm 54. I hope you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.